Patsy Ramsey says she went downstairs at about 5:30 to get clothes from a laundry cupboard just outside JonBenet's bedroom.
So I was fussing around there with some clothes.
If we catch you talking to a stray dog, she dies.
I said, I'm going to call the police. And he said, okay. And I think he ran to check on Burke. And I ran downstairs and, dialed 911.
We had no choice. We had to do something. I was ready to call out the Russian army the next.
Cina Wong has testified in more than 60 trials. She says she compared that ransom note with more than 100 samples of Patsy Ramsey's handwriting. She created these charts.
First of all, here are some similarities.
Police came to our home and we talked to them for, it seemed like hours. And they started this, well, we need you to come down to the police station.
What has thrown great suspicion on you, Mrs. Ramsey, as you know, is that some handwriting experts have said that there's a similarity between the writing on this note and your handwriting. This has been inconclusive, but the similarity of the handwriting is the strongest piece of evidence implicating you.
Well, if that's the strongest, then there's not much of a case.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
On November 17, 1997, only a few months before the DA hired Professor Donald Foster as their linguistics expert, Cina Wong, a board-certified document examiner, sent an email to the lawyer of the Ramsey housekeeper, Darnay Hoffman. Remember, the housekeeper had quickly been identified as a potential suspect by the Ramseys, and handwriting samples, not exemplars, spontaneous samples, were produced by her and by her husband even before the Ramseys did so. That happened early in the evening of December 26th. The housekeeper was giving samples of words like attaché and beheaded while JonBenet's body was still in the house, on a carpet in the lounge under the Christmas tree. Meanwhile, at the same time, pizza or pasta was being delivered to John by a lawyer, and John also decided to go for a walk. The Ramseys would eventually give their first handwriting samples in February 1997, almost 2 months later. Of course, the first 3 samples Patsy gave, I believe, were all from her right hand. Like this one, and let's put the samples side by side with the ransom note. Now, this was before detectives went to visit Patsy's school and discovered that she was ambidextrous from one of her school teachers. Now, let's get back to Cina Wong's email in November 1997. She writes, "Pursuant to your request, I've examined certain materials and documents consisting of the following. Question document," and that was a copy, not the original. Q1 3-page hand-printed ransom note begins with Mr. Ramsey and ends with victory, SBTC. It contains 67 lines, probably disguised writing. Now, something you'll notice in the first few lines of the ransom note, but then nowhere else, are severely distorted letters right in the beginning. Have a look at the second L in carefully. Have a look at the crooked, oversized W in we in the very first line and compare it to the less crooked W 2 lines lower down. By the time you get to the second paragraph, the W's have settled down a tad, but you'll notice the letter L's now are wobbly in will, but not the second reference to will where the L's are properly written. Also, compare the first reference to the oversized that to the second that 2 lines further down. What we are seeing are intertextual disparities, intertextual discrepancies in the handwriting. The text itself doesn't match itself. And this shows it probably is disguised handwriting. If someone wrote the note on the fly, it would have taken about 20 minutes to write. This is an exercise that was actually carried out. But to disguise the handwriting as well may have taken twice as long. We also see 2 possibly deliberate spelling mistakes, both in the first paragraph and then nowhere else in the 3-page note. Later in the note, the writer refers to countermeasures and exhausting, as well as adequate, and nails the spelling in all of these words. But let's get back to Cina Wong. She writes, standards used for comparison exemplars, unrehearsed writing by Patsy Ramsey, and she refers to a whole long list of copies. S1, 2-page letter addressed to Miss Kit, dated Wednesday, June 4th. S2, a greeting card pre-printed with wishing you a bright and beautiful holiday season, begins with Hi Bob and ends with Love Patsy, John and family. S3, color photocopy of photographed sign, Welcome to the Northwest Territory, has green holly leaves and red berries pointed on the cardboard brown sign. Lettering is in white. S4, color photocopy of a photograph box with Ramsey written in the lower right corner. This is where she can compare that reference to Ramsey to Mr. Ramsey in the ransom note. S5, color photocopy of a photo with 4 children, printed at the base of photo, Rainbow Fish Players. S6, color photocopy of a photo scrapbook with handprinting, This is me when I was first born. That's my mom and the doctor. I was 1. I'm having a picture taken. I was 2. I was going bike riding with my mom and dad. S7, round metal button with handprinting, Hello, I'm Marilyn Monroe. In this analysis, we're going to deal with Cina Wong's handwriting report. We didn't deal, because we couldn't deal with Professor Foster's report. Well, here we have a report where we can look at some of those specifics. But before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. By the way, if you're waiting for me to deal with the second part of Professor Foster's letter, I will be doing that. It might even come out later today, so look out for that. If you're finding this analysis worthwhile, please do hit the thanks button, and let's get started.
A ransom note demanding money or else.
The ransom note asked for an odd figure, $118,000. That was a bonus that you had received.
Well, that was one of the theories that I came up with, that it was close to the net amount I'd received that year as a bonus.
Did you know that your husband got this kind of a bonus?
Not at the time, no.
Do you think that's true? Do you think Patsy didn't know the amount of John's bonus? During all of my research, it's been very difficult to find samples of Patsy's handwriting. Patsy was a journalist. She had a BA in journalism. She was a notorious reader and writer, as the housekeeper would attest. And yet it was devilishly hard to find samples of her handwriting. So hard, so devilishly hard, that detectives like Jane Harmer went to their home in Charlevoix to find additional samples, and I think they did find some there. The point is, Cina Wong did the hard yards in actually getting hold of original samples. The rehearsed samples done after the fact really have limited value, because one can then redisguise the handwriting. And so using unrehearsed samples, that really has real value. And so Wong was able to match certain idiosyncrasies, including in the very first letters of the very first words, like the combination of the T and E in listen from listen carefully. Just have a look at this. That's pretty idiosyncratic. Now, unlike Dr. Donald Foster, whose 100-page report remains confidential and I guess off limits, we do have access to Cina Wong's report. Before we deal with it, though, Cina Wong provided the following affidavit expressing her opinion on the writer of the ransom note. This is State of Virginia, Norfolk County, Cina Wong being duly sworn, deposed, and says, and I think this was dated November 1997, I'm a court-qualified and board-certified forensic handwriting expert. My qualifications are attached to the end of this affidavit. 2. My office is located at blank. 3. I have testified in various courts of law as an expert witness in the area of handwriting identification and forensic document examination. So she's testified as an expert in several cases. Do you think she testified ultimately in this case? Number 4, I have made careful examination and comparison of the ransom note. She's got that word in quotes, ransom note, which may be a way of saying it's a bogus ransom note. And then also exemplars of Patsy Ramsey. I've reached the conclusion that the handwritings and ransom note were very probably written by the same person.
Professionally speaking, how certain are you that Patsy Ramsey wrote this ransom note?
It's highly probable that she wrote the ransom note.
Number 5, an examination of the available exemplars of Patsy Ramsey show that there are significant areas of comparison and similarity with those of the ransom note. Number 6, attached to this affidavit will be a preliminary report of my results, and we do actually have that report. 7, this opinion is based on copies of Patsy Ramsey's exemplars alleged to be true representatives of the original document. 8, the number of exemplars were limited. This is quite important. And it is the opinion of this affiant that additional exemplars, so she's basically saying, I need more samples of Patsy's handwriting. I want more samples. Can you get me more samples? She's saying that needs to be provided, as well as the original ransom note. That's another aspect that's really interesting, was that she wasn't provided with the actual original ransom note. That's also important, so that you can do things like check how hard the pen is pressing on the paper and compare that to the samples as well. That's something you can't really check in a photocopy. And so it's interesting that the defense experts had access to the original ransom note, but not actually the prosecution's witnesses. Was that by accident or by design? Because that's something the district attorney could have interfered with, said, make sure the prosecution's experts, the Boulder PD investigators, have access to the original note. And what happened? They didn't have access to it. And today that note has been destroyed during evidence testing. And so she needed that to more firmly confirm the opinions of this affidavit and the accompanying report. Now, if there are some legitimate suspicions, as I say if there are some legitimate suspicions regarding the ransom note, isn't it fortunate that the ransom note has been destroyed? It's one of the most important evidence items, and it is gone. Number 9, nevertheless, in light of the many similarities, I think she highlighted 200, between the ransom note and Patsy Ramsey's exemplars, it is my professional opinion that Patsy Ramsey very likely wrote the ransom note. And that is what she said as early as November 13, 1997. And of course, Cina Wong would go on television onto ABC's 2020 to repeat her opinion on this matter.
Cina Wong has testified in more than 60 trials. She says she compared that ransom note with more than 100 samples of Patsy Ramsey's handwriting. She created these charts.
First of all, here are some similarities.
Claiming she found substantial similarities with the way certain letters were formed, such as these A's.
Now, before we deal with Cina Wong's handwriting report, let me ask you a question. We know Professor Foster wasn't allowed to testify before the grand jury. The district attorney wouldn't allow that. What do you think happened to this witness?
You will see that just with the A's, the ransom note writer has 4 different variations of the letter A, and then Patsy Ramsey uses the same variation of the 4 different types of A's.
In total, she says she found over 200 similarities in the writing.
She found over 200 similarities in the writing. Do you think the district attorney, Alex Hunter, allowed Cina Wong to testify to the grand jury?
The answer is no!
Well, why the hell not? And what was in Cina Wong's handwriting report? What are these particular things that she highlighted? And is there any validity to her assessment? And so we'll be dealing with Cina Wong's handwriting report in part 2 of this analysis, as well as the question, why didn't the district attorney allow Cina Wong to testify according to this handwriting report? She's the second expert that is now not allowed to share her expert opinion on the ransom note, on this idea that did Patsy Ramsey write it to the grand jury. Because do you notice what is happening? One after the other of the prosecution's experts on this whole issue of the handwriting are being dismissed, are being prevented from testifying. And that does raise the question, ultimately, who was allowed to testify, and also what did the grand jury think about that? But we'll get to that in later analysis. So for now, I'm not going to take it further than that. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.